Hello there, geeks and gamers. It is I, Jesse Milestone, bringing you fluffy hair, and not the video I thought I was going to make this week. I had many other plans, and I will bring you that content as well, but I could not stop myself from addressing this subject that, yes or no, Geeks and Gamers has already covered. And I felt that Josiah's video deserved a response, and deserved my response for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is that it is important for people to know and to see and to understand that Geeks and Gamers is a community of incredibly diverse people who represent a multitude of different perspectives, and all of those perspectives, provided they are voiced in a reasonable manner, and provided that the members of the community are respected, are allowed to be voiced, are allowed to be expressed, are allowed to be held, even on polarizing issues like abortion. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, we are discussing the Disney and Sophie Turner's reaction to the Georgia abortion ban. So I do think it's important to represent multiple sides of this issue, because there are multiple sides of it. I do think it's important to discuss this, and to show, I mean, I have nothing but love and respect for Josiah. He's a wonderful guy. He's an incredible hard worker. He makes great content, and that doesn't change in spite of the epic takedown you're about to witness. So that doesn't change. Again, nothing but love, admiration, and respect for him, even though he's just dead wrong on this. The other reason I'm making this video, of course, is because videos like these lose subs for Geeks and Gamers, and making Jeremy lose subscribers is always fun for me. So anyway, even though I have a vested investment as a member of Geeks and Gamers in the success of this company. But moving into the issue. So, Georgia is one of the many states jumping on these bills, these abortion, the heartbeat bill, if you will, which basically states that once a heartbeat it can be detected in a fetus, which happens as early as 6 weeks in a pregnancy, which is frequently before many women even know they're pregnant. An abortion is no longer a valid option. Some states have clauses regarding harm. Most, I believe, have clauses regarding harm to the mother. Some, like I believe Mississippi, does not include a provision for rape or incest. Or perhaps Alabama. One of the states does not. Now, the reason that so many of these states are rapid fire passing these bills, they're all going to get challenged. They're all going to go to the Supreme Court. And now with a heavy conservative bent on the Supreme Court bench, many people who are pro-life feel that they're going to finally have the manpower to overturn Roe v. Wade. And so they're going to bring this in front of the court over and over again, hoping to push them into making that kind of decision. In light of this, many prominent members of Hollywood, Netflix, Disney, Sophie Turner, have stated they will no longer work in the state of Georgia. Netflix made a more sweeping pullout on that. Ron Howard stated he's going to move production for Hillbilly Elegy out of Florida. Disney has recently left a statement, a much vaguer one, of little, as Josiah put it. Well, and look, there were things that the man got right in his video, and we'll praise him for that. I just also like to say that Josiah's imitation of Jeremy's imitation of SJWs is effing spot on, and I love it. Disney's condemnation was a little bit more vague and less conclusive in terms of really taking a stand on whether it will continue production in Georgia or not. So, like, bitch move on you, Disney. Absolute bitch move on you. And Josiah goes on in his video. I encourage you to take a look, listen to his words himself. Don't just allow me to paraphrase for him. Listen to the man speak for himself. He presents his point very cogently, in spite of how off base it is. But it's very cogent. It's very logically presented. To discuss the hypocrisy of Sophie Turner, Disney saying these things when, if a heartbeat bill were passed of this ilk across the country, that they wouldn't just give up. They wouldn't just not shoot anymore. They wouldn't just, Sophie Turner just wouldn't stop acting. And how hypocritical it is that she went off and shot Game of Thrones in Ireland, who at the time had a near total abortion ban in their country while Game of Thrones was being shot. And that just fundamentally misunderstands the leverage that's happening here. Because from where I'm sitting, from my perspective, I'm saying kudos to you, Hollywood. I'm saying thank you for actually taking action, for actually doing it. And this is where it bugs me, because this is this whole thing. To act like Hollywood isn't and has never been political is crazy. Famous people, CEOs, producers in Hollywood have always used their weight and their influence to do things for good or for ill. I mean, charity benefits are an enormous part of Hollywood culture, and wealthy culture in general. That's one version of using capitalistic influence. I will put my money towards these things that I like, that are beneficial, in my opinion, to society, and also, curry goodwill. Because let's face it, it was in the public eye, in the public spotlight. Currying goodwill is an enormous part of that, and that's a selfish and shallow element of it. But at the end of the day, good is still done. And so people in Hollywood have always been political. I don't have a problem with that. We're all human beings. There's no requirement that says you can't use your weight or your influence to try to make your voice known or get policies passed that you think are good. I have an issue when it ends up in my narrative storytelling. That's a problem for me. I mean, and again, you can make political movies. That's fine if it's supposed to be there. When it ends up in every single facet of my storytelling, my fantasy movies can't escape the zeitgeist of American social politics, then I have a problem. But what you guys do outside of the movie that I'm watching, that I'm consuming, I'm here for your product. And I'm able to separate that. I've listened to musicians whose personal lives and opinions I don't agree with. I've watched movies with actors that I don't agree with things on. It takes something particularly personal or particularly bad for me to turn around and say, I'm not going to watch this movie because so-and-so is in it. Because I don't agree with all of these people, and I don't have to. That's the beauty of art and creation. I just have to respond to the art they're making, and that's part of what bridges us as people. And so to make these over-politicized statements of saying, like, first of all, I'm going to put all of my politics into my art, and therefore you can't separate the two, and on the flip side of that, to say, I'm going to take all of your politics and apply it to your art and judge your art based on your politics, is failing to separate those two, and is to steep further into this ridiculous tribalism that separates us rather than brings us together. I mean, the whole point is that as human beings, we should be able to come together and love each other and respect each other, even when we disagree. And that's where it falls apart for me, is when you start adding the politics into the art. And this is not mixing politics and art. This is mixing politics and business, which Hollywood, in my opinion, has every right to do. I stand by their right to do that. I stand by a studio's right to make conscientious and moral decisions based on major elements of policy like this. And now here's the thing where I'm really going to hold Josiah accountable. There are pro-life people, there are pro-choice people, there are people incredibly pro-life, incredibly pro-choice, and everywhere in between. And the only thing that I think is wrong to do when discussing abortion, the only thing that I think is fundamentally wrong to do is to misrepresent abortion as a simple issue. And that is something Josiah did in his video on this channel that I do find unhelpful, if I'm going to put it mildly. I find it incredibly either naive, ignorant, or deceitful. And I don't want to say any of those things of Josiah, because I don't believe any of those things about him as a person. I just think that when you represent such a complicated issue that there isn't any choice in the abortion issue that's victimless. There is not. And to act like there is nuts. And yeah, you can sit there and say, oh, I think it's pretty simple to say, well, if a fetus has a heartbeat, it's a human being, and therefore you shouldn't kill it. Yeah, that sounds very, very simple. Okay, so explain to me how I grow up, I have a child, she's 13 years old, she, in spite of all my best efforts, gets involved with the wrong kind of guy, sneaks off with him, has unprotected sex because he's 18 and tells her it's going to be totally fine, and pressures her into it, and she's 13 and thinks she knows everything, and thinks everything's going to be fine, and then she gets pregnant and comes to me, and I have to sit down and explain to her, well, sweetheart, you made a bad decision, and now you have to live with the consequences of the decision for the rest of your life. This is going to ruin the rest of your childhood. This is going to ruin your body permanently. This is going to scar you mentally forever. This is going to affect your psyche no matter what else happens to you. This is possibly going to affect your ability to graduate and go on and have a career. Your life might be ruined in this moment because of this bad decision that you allowed your naive 13-year-old self to be talked into making. We hold 13-year-olds minimally. A 13-year-old can go out and murder somebody and not be held accountable for that decision the way that these types of bills force a woman to be responsible for a sexual action. A 13-year-old boy could go out and stab several people to death and still end up tried as a juvenile, and still end up in a situation where he's able to go on and live a normal life. Hopefully he's still with mental scarring, unless he's an effing psychopath. But no other situation could you have something that happens, and that's not a crime. It's not a crime to have unprotected sex. It's just an irresponsible decision, and we're holding the consequences of that decision are so colossal and monumental. To sit there and say, oh, whoops, you had no idea you were pregnant because you were 13. It's 13 weeks in now. Baby's got a heartbeat. Too bad. You're screwed. And then to sit there and explain to that same child that her life has now just been ruined because she let herself get talked into a bad decision. Oh, but what happens to him? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing happens to him. Unless he is, in fact, 18 and then perhaps can be tried for statutory rape. But let's say he's 17 and consent laws, age of consent in that state say that this is a perfectly reasonable action to have happened, then nothing happens to him. Then I explain that even though it was his idea, even though he pressured you into it, and he was the one who convinced you and told you that it would be fine, nothing bad is going to happen to him. He's going to go on with his Mary. He's going to deny that this child has anything to do with this child whatsoever. He's never going to speak to you again. He's going to go 500 other women in the span of time that you are going through 9 months of absolute misery and hell. How do you want me to explain that to my child? How do you think that's a simple issue? How do you think that's just a fine thing? Oh, well, it's got a heartbeat, so it's a human. Deal with it, because your primary function, forget your life, forget the things you wanted, forget the person that you are. Your primary function in this world is to make this baby. And that's the only thing that matters. Your life is forfeit now because of this bad decision that you made when you were 13. That's a simple issue to you? If you think that's simple, if you think there's anything simple about that, then I don't know. I mean, once again, either you're being deceitful, naive, or ignorant, because unwanted pregnancy has permanent physiological and psychological effects, consequences for the woman, and far fewer for the man. And that's just the reality of it. That's the way that it is. And I get so sick and tired of people acting like it's no big deal. Oh, she can just give the baby up for adoption, as if that's somehow going to alleviate her of anywhere from $5,000 to $11,000 worth of medical bills that, depending on her access to healthcare, she may not be able to afford at all. That's somehow going to, that just giving the baby up is going to give her those 9 months of her life back. God knows where she might be at that point in her life and what that might cost her career-wise, school-wise, etc. The physiological effects, the potential cracking of the pelvis, the permanent damage it does to your ability to pee, the potential of never being able to have a child again, the potential of being psychologically scarred enough to never want to have a child again, the potential psychological scarring effects that it has on your future relationships, your ability to trust other people. There are permanent physiological and psychological side effects of an unwanted pregnancy, and to act like it's just so simple as to just, oh, wait 9 months and give it up for adoption is either naive or ignorant, because there's nothing simple about this issue. Nobody wants to kill a fetus. And that's by the way, on the other side of things too, the people walk around gung-ho being like, yeah, abortion's no big deal, are just as naive and just as ignorant, if not more so, to act like the act of doing something like that doesn't also have permanent psychological effects. If you have ever met somebody, if you've ever personally known somebody who's underwent an abortion, whether it was for a medical necessity or any other reason, this is not an easy decision that they made. This is not an easy thing they went through. And this is something that lives with them, haunts them, and scars them for the rest of their lives. This is not just a simple cut and dry, like, well, I could be inconvenienced for 9 months, or I could just walk away scot-free. No, this is, do I want 9 months of physical misery and hell, plus psychological scarring, permanent physiological scarring, permanent damages to my body from this, possibly diabetes, and many other, myriad other medical issues that can come from this? Or do I want to be permanently psychologically scarred, ostracized for my decision, judged for my decision, held accountable for it by people who don't understand why I made the choice that I did? This is not a simple black and white issue. For some people, it is. By the language in the UN, this is a very simple issue. The UN deems it as a medical necessity for a woman to have the right to an abortion. It can be potentially life-saving. It certainly will save her from permanent physiological damage. Right? There are states where if somebody is going to, where it is legal to kill someone in self-defense if it seems likely that they are going to cause you permanent physiological damage. And the UN regards the ability to get access to an abortion as a fundamental part of bodily autonomy, and it regards the freedom of bodily autonomy as a fundamental international human right. So according to the UN, denying women abortions is actually a violation of international human rights law. So you want to look black and white, simple like that. You may think it's such a simple issue for you or for some people. Well, it looks just as simple from the other side, let me tell you. And the reality is, if you spend more than 5 seconds thinking about it, there's nothing simple about this whatsoever. whatsoever. So for all, I 100% respect what Josiah is saying, respect him calling out Hollywood, and because on the one hand, he is right. There's only so much they're willing to do. There's only so much weight they're willing to throw around for this. They're absolutely willing to say, I'll pull out of this state, I'll pull out of that state, because Georgia has been a heavy filming state. They're willing to throw their weight onto that side, thinking that maybe it will have an impact. And of course, there's only so far they're willing to go. Sophie Turner is not giving up her career. Disney's not shutting down its American studios. And so to one extent, you're right. On the other hand, to the other extent, I think you're misunderstanding the influence that they're able to have. If there's a 50-state ban on abortions, then you can no longer leverage economic pressure by moving to another state because all the states have the same law. Likewise, if you just happen to be shooting in Ireland, you're shooting the show in Ireland, you have, as a foreign body, you have much more limited financial leverage on a foreign nation. Even if they were like, oh, we're going to pull out over this abortion thing because it's a moral issue. So the whole thing is that the thing that I think is being misconstrued here is that they're not doing this simply because it's the morally the right or wrong thing to do. They're doing it because they feel it's the morally right or wrong thing to do, and they think that their action will have a consequence. They're morally ambiguous Hollywood people. They're not going to draw that hard line just based on morals alone. And Josiah, you're 100% right for calling them out on that. That is absolutely the correct thing to do. If something is as powerful as this, if you really believe in it that strongly, this should be moral absolutism, and you should be setting that example by conducting yourself according to that concept. But the other hand is that it wouldn't make sense for them to not do it in those other contexts, because then they're not getting anything done. They're just making a statement. It's just like, I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat meat. Great, what else do you do for animal rights? Oh, nothing. You're just making a statement just for the sake of making a statement and not actually affecting change or causing any change with those actions. So I, for one, am very happy that so many different studios and members of Hollywood are standing up and saying things that they will hope have some sort of financial implication, some sort of effect on this situation. I am proud of the people who are doing it. I accept the limitations of those actions, and agree that Josiah is 100% right to call them out on that hypocrisy. However, to represent this issue as anything other than what it is, which is complex and very, very sad, a sad thing to have to deal with, is very, very short-sighted, especially considering that, by the way, banning abortions, for all the evidence that we have, does not stop abortions. It simply makes them illegal, which makes them less safe, which means a greater loss of human life, which, just gonna one more little side note, I just really enjoyed that in the same video that Josiah absolutely decries abortion as 100% morally wrong, also lauds capitalism and the benefits of voting with your wallet, which, by the way, yeah, we get to vote with our wallets, so does Disney. Disney's still a capitalist corporation. That's exactly what they're doing here too. So, but you saying I'm going to boycott their films because they're pro-life or they're pro-choice is no different than them saying I'm going to boycott Georgia because they're pro-life. So you're doing the same thing. So if you want to call it their hypocrisy, what's the difference between what they're doing and what you're doing? They're still people with opinions and using their capitalist power to, wave it around. But anyway, I just think it's funny where it's like, oh, yay, the glories of capitalism, which also, when you apply them to the method of governing people outside of just your economic marketplace, is the system that says that people can die if it is economically not beneficial to somebody else. It's the system that says it's totally fine to shut someone's heat off in the middle of winter because they didn't pay their bill and let them freeze to death. It's a system that says it's totally fine for you to say this woman is not allowed to have an abortion, but no, we don't want any money to go into the broken foster care system to help care for that child as they grow. We don't want any money to go into paying for the health care of this woman who is in a situation that she can't afford. So this is not a condemnation of Josiah particularly. I don't know his opinions and policies regarding things like healthcare and welfare systems. So I'm not making any condemnation of his feelings on that because I don't know them. But I do find it just ridiculously hypocritical to be a person who is staunchly pro-life, to say no abortions ever, that's bad, but is also very much against any sort of welfare programs that help people with health insurance, with childcare, with things like that. So, I mean, do you actually care about the lives of these children, or do you just care about them being born? Because until we also improve our healthcare system in this country, we also have one of the higher mortality rates for mothers in the developed world. We do a worse job of that than Saudi Arabia, who, by the way, hates women. So, chew on that. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Those are my feelings. It's got a little long here. Hopefully you're still on board. I just want to share that with you guys. Dissent all you want. Tell me you hate me. Tell me I'm stupid. I don't care. The whole point is that, you know, Josiah's allowed to speak his mind on this channel. I'm allowed to speak my mind on this channel. You guys are all allowed to speak your mind in the comments, and that's part of what makes Geeks and Gamers great. So if you want to engage in a measured debate, if you want to engage in fact-based disagreement, that's awesome. If you want to just throw hate at me, that's fine. I won't read it or respond, but you totally have the right to do that too. And I'll talk to you guys again very soon.